He slapped me again last night, and I still said, I love you. But that was the last time, because the same woman he called trash became the one a rich man called treasure. Have you ever loved someone who made you feel small? If yes, write it in the comments. And if you believe no one should ever be hurt in the name of love, tap that like button right now, because someone out there needs this story. My name is Esther, and this is the story of how I lost myself and how I found my way back. When I was younger, I thought marriage was the prize for being good. I believed if I cooked, cleaned, obeyed, and smiled enough, love would stay. I thought respect was automatic, that kindness would be returned. I was wrong. I used to think being a wife meant giving everything your time, your body, your smile. I thought if I cooked, cleaned, and stayed quiet, love would stay too. But I was wrong. Jeff and I married on a bright afternoon in June. Everyone clapped as we walked out of the church hand in hand. He wore a grey suit and that confident smile that made me feel safe. For a while, life looked perfect. He'd bring me flowers after work. We'd eat dinner together and talk about our future plans, the business he wanted to start, the children we'd raise, the house with the garden I dreamed of. Before we got married, Jeff was kind. He spoke softly and made me laugh until my cheeks hurt. He called me every morning just to say, "Good day, my queen." He opened doors, held my hand in public, and said I was the best thing that ever happened to him. We would walk together by the beach on Sundays, barefoot in the sand, talking about our dreams. He would buy roasted corn from the roadside and say, "Let's share," even though he ate most of it. Sometimes we went to little cafes, where he fed me spoonfuls and told me I looked beautiful. He promised one day we'd have our own home with music, laughter, and peace. He made me believe in forever. Every night before sleep, he whispered, "You're mine, Esther." Always, and I believed him. But after the wedding, everything changed. His soft voice turned hard. His gentle hands became heavy. The man who once carried my bag now carried anger. The laughter, the walks, the sweet words, they all disappeared. And I was left asking, where did that man go? The first time Jeff slapped me, I said nothing. He cried later and said, "I'm sorry, I was angry." The next week, he shouted again. Then came another slap and another. Soon I started saying sorry for everything. Sorry the food is too salty. Sorry I talk too much. Sorry for being me. My world became smaller and smaller. I was scared to laugh. I was scared to speak. Even the sound of his key in the door made my heart jump. But no one knew my pain. Not my friends. Not my family. Whenever people came around, I smiled. When friends asked, "How's Jeff?" I said, "He's perfect." When my parents called, I said, "We're fine." My friends envied me. They said, "You're so lucky, Esther." My parents said, "Jeff is a good man." Even Jeff's friends told me, "You're blessed, he loves you." They all thought I had the best husband in the world. But they didn't know that when the door closed, he became someone else. At home, he was not a husband. He was a storm. His voice was thunder. His silence was worse. Every day felt like walking through fire just to survive. Abuse doesn't always start with fists. It starts with a tone, a word, a silence that eats you from the inside out. Some nights were worse than others. He'd come home smelling of alcohol, his steps heavy. I'd hold my breath as he entered. "Why's the food cold?" he'd shout. Before I could answer, the plate would crash against the wall. The sound of shattering glass was my evening bell. The first slap shocked me. I remember the sting, the disbelief. Then came another harder, colder. I fell, holding my cheek, my heart beating like a drum. He stood over me and said, "You make me do this. You never listen." That night I sat in the corner hugging my knees. The rain outside was softer than his words. I promised myself I'd leave, but by morning fear tied me back. He said sorry, brought me bread, kissed my forehead like nothing happened, and I believed him because I wanted to. Time moved slowly, like a wounded animal. Days bled into nights, months turned into silent seasons. Her eyes looked tired, her skin was pale. Her smile had disappeared. I started keeping a small notebook hidden under my pillow. In it, I wrote things I wanted to remember. I love painting. I once wanted to be a teacher. I like yellow dresses. It was my way of reminding myself that I had existed before Jeff. It was a Saturday evening the day everything changed. I had cooked his favourite meal, jollof rice with fried plantain. The smell filled the house. I waited for him, hoping maybe tonight would be peaceful. He came home late. His eyes were red. Without a word, he dropped his bag and looked at the food. "What's this mess?" he said. "I made your favourite," I answered softly. He took a spoon, tasted it, and spat it out. "It's too salty." "You can't do anything right." Before I could speak, the back of his hand hit my face so hard my ears rang. I stumbled, my head spinning. He shouted words I can't even repeat. When he left, I lay there on the floor, the smell of rice and smoke around me. My heart whispered, "You can't do this anymore." That night, I packed a small bag. Not to run, I didn't have the courage yet, but to remind myself that maybe one day I could. That night, as I lay on the floor, I promised myself, if I survive this, I'll never live like this again. The sun rose quietly. My face ached. I put on dark glasses to hide the bruise. I needed air. I walked out for the first time in months, clutching that little bag. The city felt strange, like I'd stepped into another world. People were laughing, children were running, music played from shops. Life was moving on, but not for me. I walked to the park near the market. I sat on a bench watching people live the life I had forgotten. Then someone's shadow fell over me. "Excuse me, miss. Are you all right?" I looked up. A tall man in a navy blue suit stood there, holding a coffee cup. He had kind eyes, the kind that don't just look at you, but see you. "I'm fine," I said quickly, trying to hide the bruise with my hand. But he didn't move away. He sat beside me, leaving just enough space to show respect. "You don't look fine," he said gently. I felt something break inside me. The wall I'd built around my pain began to crumble. We sat there in silence for a moment. Then he said, "My name's Alex." I nodded. "Esther?" He smiled. "That's a beautiful name." No one had called my name beautiful in years. Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. "I'm sorry," I whispered, wiping them away. "Don't be," he said softly. "Sometimes crying is how the soul breathes." I told him everything, things I hadn't said aloud even to myself. I spoke about Jeff, about the shouting, the slaps, the emptiness. He listened. Not once did he interrupt or look away. When I finished, he said quietly, "Esther, you deserve to be treated with kindness. You deserve peace." Those words felt like sunlight breaking through a storm. Alex told me he owned a company, a big one. He said they needed help with community projects. Then he asked, "Would you like to work with us?" I laughed bitterly. "Work? I haven't worked in years. I don't know anything anymore." He shook his head. "You know how to care, to survive, to keep going when life hits hard. That's strength. We need people like that." I didn't know why, but I said yes. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was the way he said my name like it meant something. When I got home that evening, Jeff was asleep. I looked at him, the man I had loved, and felt nothing but emptiness. For the first time, I realized I was already halfway gone. If you're still watching this, it means you believe in second chances. Comment hope below so others know they're not alone. And if this story touches you, please share it. Someone out there needs. Arrived at Alex's office the next morning. It was tall, shining, full of people who smiled. I felt small, but Alex greeted me at the door like I was an old friend. He introduced me to his assistant, who showed me around. They gave me a desk near the window. From there, I could see the city, the same city that once scared me. My job was to help organize charity events, feeding children, visiting women's shelters, planning donations. It wasn't glamorous, but every time someone smiled because of something I did, I felt alive again. Every day, Alex would stop by my desk. "How are you finding things?" he'd ask. And every day I'd answer, "Better." And it was true. For the first time in years, I was healing. Weeks passed. I began to walk with my head higher. I bought a yellow dress, my favourite colour, and wore it to work. When I saw my reflection in the mirror, I smiled. I looked free. Alex noticed too. "You look happy," he said one morning. "I'm learning to be," I replied. He nodded. "That's the best lesson there is." He started inviting me to meetings, asking for my ideas. When I spoke, people listened. When I made mistakes, no one shouted. They simply helped me learn. It felt strange being treated with respect, but I liked it. I was beginning to see myself the way Alex saw me: capable, strong, worthy. One evening, as I was leaving work, my phone rang. It was Jeff. My stomach tightened. "Where are you?" he barked. "I'm at work." "Work? Who told you to work? You're my wife. Come home now." His voice made me tremble, but I didn't move. "Jeff," I said softly, "I have a job now. I'm not doing anything wrong." He laughed bitterly. "So now you think you're better than me?" The line went dead. I stood there, shaking. Alex walked out of the building just then. He saw my face and asked what happened. I told him. He looked serious for a moment, then said, "Esther, listen to me. You don't owe anyone your pain. If he ever hurts you again, promise me you'll leave." I nodded, tears running down my cheeks. I knew he was right, but fear still had its claws in me. A week later, Jeff came home drunk again. He found the business card Alex had given me. "Who is Alex?" he shouted. "He's my boss," I said. "Your boss? Or your new man?" Before I could answer, he grabbed me by the arm. His grip was strong, his eyes wild. "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me?" Something inside me snapped. For years I had begged, cried, apologized, but not this time. I looked him straight in the eye and said, "You didn't do anything for me. You only took from me." He froze, shocked. I pulled my arm free and walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" he shouted. "Away," I said, "far away." And for the first time, I meant it. I didn't pack, I didn't plan. I just walked into the night with nothing but my courage and phone. When I reached the main road, I called Alex. He answered on the first ring. "Esther?" "I left," I whispered. "I finally left." "Where are you?" "At the old park." "Stay there." "I'm coming." He arrived within minutes, wrapped his jacket around my shoulders and said nothing. He didn't need to. The silence between us said everything. For the first time in years, I felt safe. He drove me to a small guest house and paid for a room. Before he left, he said, "Rest. Tomorrow we'll start fresh." That night, as I lay in bed, I looked at the ceiling and whispered, "Thank you." Not to Alex, not to anyone, but to life. Because somehow, after all the darkness, the light had found me. For the first time in years, I slept without fear. The rain fell softly outside. It sounded like freedom. Would you trust a stranger who offered you a new life? Tell me in the comments. For the first time in years, I slept without fear. But I didn't know that sleep would be the start of a brand new life, because the same man who gave me shelter was about to give me purpose and love. Before we continue, tell me, have you ever felt like life gave you a second chance? Drop it in the comments if you believe in new beginnings. And don't forget to like this video so someone who needs hope can find it today. When I opened my eyes, the room was quiet. No yelling, no fear, just peace. I sat up and looked around the little guest room Alex had paid for. For a moment, I didn't know who I was without the pain. Then I realized I was free. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Alex. "Good morning, Esther. Breakfast is downstairs. Take your time." It was the simplest text I'd ever gotten, yet it felt like a warm hug. Someone cared if I ate. Someone remembered me. He drove me to work. People said, "Good morning, Esther." I said, "Good morning." And I smiled for real. I kept my small office room. I cleaned it myself. I saved a little money each week. I wrote in a notebook, "I am safe. I am learning. I am growing." At lunch, I sat by the window and watched the city. It did not scare me anymore. There was a new charity project, feeding children and helping women in shelters. When they asked, "Who will plan it?" I said, "I can try." I made lists. I called donors. I packed boxes. I wrote small notes that said, "You are loved." On the event day, my hands shook, but I stood tall and spoke. I was scared once. I was quiet once, but I am still here. They clapped. Some cried. I cried too. From that day, something changed. I started helping women, children, and even men who were hurting. I told them that pain doesn't have to be the end. It can be the beginning. I listened when they spoke. I shared my story when they felt lost. I became a shoulder to lean on, a friend to many. Soon, people started talking about me. They called me the woman who turned pain into power. Newspapers wrote small stories about our charity. Pictures of our events were everywhere. I became a name people mentioned with a smile. Everywhere I went, people waved and said, "That's Esther, the woman who helps." I didn't feel small anymore. I was doing great at work. I was real. And I was finally proud of the person in the mirror. That night, I wrote in my notebook, "Today, I helped others. Today, I helped me. And today, I became someone new." I changed my number. I walked to work with music in my ears. I went to a support class every Friday. We sat in a circle and spoke about fear and freedom. One lady said, "Scars are not ugly. They're proof we survived." I wrote that down in my book with a heart beside it. Each morning, Alex would say, "Good to see you, Esther." And each time, I felt seen. At lunch, he'd sometimes sit with me. He talked about the future, not the past. He never asked for anything in return. He just listened. He made me believe peace was real. If you're still watching, write growth in the comments to show someone else that change is possible. And please share this story. You never know who might need to hear it tonight. One bright afternoon, I went to buy fruit. Across the street, I saw Jeff. For a second, I froze. Then I breathed. He looked tired, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes sad. He said, "Esther." I stood still, but I was not small anymore. "It's okay," I said softly. "I forgave you. But I'm not yours anymore. No anger, no fear, just peace." He nodded and walked away. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just smiled and whispered, "Thank you, God." It's over. Weeks turned into months. Alex remained the same, steady, kind, quiet. Sometimes we laughed over coffee. Sometimes we worked late on projects. He never rushed me. He waited for me to heal at my own speed. He once said, "Some flowers take longer to bloom, but they still shine." His words stayed with me. One evening after work, he walked me to my door. "Do you know how strong you've become?" he asked. I smiled. "Maybe a little." He said, "You're not a little strong. You're sunshine after rain." My heart felt warm. It was not love yet, but it was trust. And that was enough. A few months later, he invited me to dinner. "It's for the team," he said. But when I arrived, it was just us. The restaurant was beautiful lights like tiny stars, soft music floating. I wore my yellow dress again. He stood up when I walked in and smiled like he'd been waiting his whole life. We talked for hours about books, about forgiveness, about how love should never hurt. When the waiter left, Alex looked at me with those kind eyes and said, "Esther, you've come so far. You remind me that strength can be gentle. You deserve happiness. And if you'll let me, I want to give it to you." Tears filled my eyes. I didn't speak. I just nodded. He stood up. He went down on one knee. He opened a small box. Inside was a simple ring, shining like hope. "Esther," he said, his voice gentle, "will you marry me?" For a moment I saw everything, the tears, the nights, the fights, the fear, and then I saw light. I said softly, "Yes." The restaurant clapped. The music rose. Alex slipped the ring on my finger. It felt like peace. We did not rush. We planned slowly. I kept my work. I kept my new friends. I kept my yellow dress. Some nights we cooked together. He washed plates, I dried them. We laughed over silly things. No shouting, no fear, just two people being kind. I wrote in my notebook, hurt tried to end me. Hope taught me to begin again. He met my parents. They cried with joy. My friends hugged me and said, "You look alive again." We planned a small wedding not for show but for heart. Simple flowers, soft music, smiling faces. On the morning of our wedding, I stood in front of the mirror in a white dress I bought with my own money. I touched the scar on my cheek. It was faint now. I whispered, "This is me. And I am enough." The church was filled with light. Flowers lined the aisle, soft wind came through the open doors. I walked slowly down the path, holding a small bouquet. Every step felt like a prayer of thank you. At the altar stood Alex, my billionaire, my friend, my safe place. He was smiling like the world was new. When I reached him, he took my hand and said, "No more tears, Esther. Just peace and laughter from today." I laughed softly and whispered, "I never knew love could feel this safe." We said our vows. We promised to be kind, to listen, to forgive. When he kissed me, the church cheered. I was no longer the woman who hid her pain. I was a queen, not because of his money, but because I finally knew my worth. If you've ever been broken, remember this. You can rise again. Because if love can hurt, it can also heal. Comment Queen below if you believe every woman deserves a second chance at happiness. Please like, share, and subscribe for more stories of strength and hope.